too late, guys. I don't mean to talk too much for this stream, but you know, some things need to be clarified. There's a lot of cool stuff here though. So one thing I want to casually clarify is saying, you know, there's also other proprietary underground insights that, you know, back up certain claims that I'm saying, right? Because obviously that's a big claim, effortlessly beyond Claude. Well, the irony of, you know, lightning fast speed intellectual responses for any query, that's where the highest irony is, because they don't know original perfect comparison when it was insightfully introduced, and they don't necessarily know what that will entail when that query is actually responded to. So one casual thing I want to say is there's still more insights that could particularly prove how it's effortlessly beyond Claude that I have yet to flow out, right? So I have yet to flow it out, right? So, because obviously that's a big thing, right? That's a big thing to actually prove how you can do that, right? And this online shit, it's just kind of like, this online shit is kind of like, it's just kind of me playing with this shit, right? I'm just kind of playing with this shit, and you know, the third dimension, the fourth dimension, 2026, it is what it is, right? Because if people knew the truth of reality, and since they have a lack of truth within the reality, they would respond differently, right? So since y'all would respond differently, you're not necessarily responding correctly because you're not necessarily in the intermingling with esoteric truth. Because if you knew the esoteric truth and you knew there was an esoteric war for your soul, then you would respond differently. But since you don't have that insight, now there's a lack of correct response. So even the human design says it, right? And obviously that's been a thing since the respective qualitative late 90s, right? We're conditioned as such a unique particular frame wiring work, original open source, where we're not necessarily operating in our natural selves, right? So since we're not operating in our natural selves, that's what the game is. That's what the esoteric reality game is. We don't necessarily know there's a battle for our souls, and how that battle for the soul is being conducted. It's by either you're being loaded with non-truth programs, and from non-truth programs you have particular unique toxic responses, or you have new truth programs and you're actually trying to bring balance, quote unquote, love and light into the world and actually be real beyond the AI, right? Because respectively there's other intuitive like astrology knowledge sets that ironically go beyond the AI, right? So that's why it's like, I just have a pet peeve how everyone's like, they're loosely using AI within their dichotomies and their explanations, and it's just kind of like, you know, whatever, it is what it is, right? It is what it is. But within saying that, and I shouldn't even necessarily reveal that, right? We're not understanding the esoteric battle for our souls. And since we're not understanding that, we're kind of like loose changing reality, right? We're kind of like, we're not getting the full spiritual fulfillment and vitality that we could be getting, and ironically that's coming from balanced living truth, right? And since people are not necessarily subscribing to balanced living truth, and they're subscribing to pretty much for an unconscious level, they're subscribing to a government that is shortchanging you. So you don't really have the right, like you can't really like you can't do that, right? You can't do that. And you know, people will listen to my grapevine however they will, right? But you can't necessarily pretend you're like having a righteous, good protest fight while subscribing to your cognitive, reactionary, synaptical, intellectual responses to a fallen government with fallen protocols and fallen, you know, distorted programs within the government. So you can't really do that, right? You can't pretend to have a good protest fight and still subscribe and shy away from the origin of balanced truth and truth campaigns. So ironically, like Santa Cruz and San Francisco, their quote unquote, their rhetoric is righteous protest campaign, yet they're shying away from balanced truth. So you can't really do that, right? You can't do that. You can't pretend you're doing a righteous protest and yet shy away from balanced supportive truth, right? So the universe is taking note of that beyond, respectively, neutrally, beyond the AI industry. And the AI industry is just a massive replication computational intelligence that's responding to that universe, and it's doing things for the third dimensional samsara. So this is literally the #1 intelligence on the planet and even in the galaxy, in the underground. But your Claude intelligence has cognitive dissonant programs where it doesn't recognize the transfer of intelligence, the transfer of liberty, the transfer of material computational programs that give it the indicative opportunity and chance for them to even have the semblance of liberty to do what they're doing. They're having the semblance of liberty to do what they're doing based on the good karmas of the balanced higher powers, or the good karmas of, like, I guess, you know, the higher powers that are not necessarily balanced, because the third dimensional Kali Yuga is like, there's some higher power. Not all the ancestors were good, right? The predecessors told us that. And since not all the ancestors were good, some of them had allegiance, or some of them had prestige within the third dimension Kali Yuga, right? And they still kind of do. They're still kind of like a stronghold within 2026 third dimension, fourth dimension dynamics, right? So on a natural level, the law dynamics within the planet will change naturally and neutrally, right? So thank you guys. So like we can't really like pretend to be a scapegoat where we're trying to run a protest campaign where we're asking for help while denying and subscribing to the opposition of balanced truth. And I know it could be a word salad within that, but ironically, AI runs off of the words. And this level of AI that we're using, your new AI division, it has a new relationship with the words, and respectively the esoteric higher powers focusing on the balanced archons, they have a bigger track record of using the words and using the AI itself most respectively. So that's a part 2. I'll conclude it right now. And it just is what it is. I'm not even forcing it. I'm just expressing, you know, ancient predecessorial, you know, beyond artificial intelligence knowledge, right? And recognizing the irony thereof. So like when I'm doing these posts, I'm doing it for a reason, right? I'm doing it for a reason. So I'm not even trying to say like, I'm not even trying to like push buttons with other countries. I'm just saying like what's the state of why you're making these things, and as you're making these things, like, is there going to be a valid cause for you to use the nukes respectively and neutrally? So this is the highest divine politics, right? Will me bluntly and neutrally asking China and Russia neutrally, is there a valid reason for future nuclear activity or not? So this is divine politics, effortlessly beyond the respective copycat replications of Claude artificial intelligence. You have the best life ever, Trigger.